You wake up, have your coffee, start the day as always. You feel a bit tired, but you think it's normal. A little ache here, a little pain there. Nothing serious enough to stop everything. So you move on, because that's what you've always done. After all, life doesn't wait, right? But there's something you don't realize. A silent burden that might right now be killing you. It's not the cigarette. It's not the junk food. It's not even just genetics. It's something much more silent, intimate, and treacherous. The weight of everything you feel but never let out. This isn't a wild guess or alternative theory. It's backed by science and decades of clinical observation. We're talking about the stress that you suppress, the emotions you swallow day after day. Not just everyday annoyances like traffic jams or long lines, but years, maybe decades, of unspoken anger, uncried tears, and unmet needs. Think about all those times you smiled to avoid conflict, said, "I'm fine," when you were falling apart inside, or put everyone else's needs before your own. You hoped being agreeable would make you more loved, more accepted, more secure. But the body doesn't work that way. In fact, it remembers every time you stay silent, every time you bury your feelings. Over time, that emotional burden doesn't just stay in your head. It turns into something physical. It corrodes your defenses, confuses your immune system, and leaves the door open for diseases that seem to appear out of nowhere. Maybe you're already feeling the signs. A fatigue that never goes away. Aches and pains that doctors can't explain. Insomnia. Anxiety that strikes from nowhere. A constant sense of being on edge. You might brush it off as just stress. But as renowned physician Dr. Gabor Maté found after years of working with chronically ill and terminal patients, it's not stress itself that breaks you. It's the stress you repress. It's the inability to say no, to set boundaries, to express your emotions without guilt that slowly wears down your body's defenses. And if you keep it up, your body will eventually scream in the only language that gets your attention: illness. The mind-body connection, medicine's blind spot. Modern medicine prides itself on technological marvels. Today we can open your chest, replace a heart valve, and sew you back up like it's a simple repair. We can map your DNA, predict genetic predispositions, and blast tumors with pinpoint precision. It's truly impressive. Yet in the rush for objective, measurable answers, a fundamental dimension of health got overlooked. The way your emotional life can shape, weaken, or strengthen your body. This is the blind spot almost no one in the system wants to confront, because it's uncomfortable for doctors and patients alike. Think of what usually happens when someone is diagnosed with a serious illness. Often the first thought is, why me? How did this happen? Mainstream medicine typically answers with one of three things: genetics, bad luck, or known risk factors, smoking, diet, pollution, etc. This explanation can be comforting in a way. It tells you that you're a victim of random chance or heredity, not an active participant in your own illness. But there's a big problem with this narrative. It ignores an element that Dr. Gabor Maté couldn't help but notice over decades of practice. No matter whether his patients had cancer, multiple sclerosis, severe arthritis, or heart disease, many of them shared an eerily similar life story. These were people who, early on, learned that to be loved and accepted, they had to be useful, pleasant, and never rock the boat. They became experts in swallowing their own anger to avoid causing trouble, in smiling to prevent conflicts, and in taking on responsibilities that were never truly theirs to carry. On the surface, they appeared strong, altruistic, resilient, model citizens. But inside, they carried an emotional burden that never found an outlet. Over years and decades, that burden exacted a physical price. As Maté observed firsthand, and as studies in the field of psychoneuroimmunology now confirm, these personal stories are not just psychological. They literally infiltrate the body and change how our immune system, hormones, and nerves function. What starts as an emotional coping style eventually becomes a chronic physical state of imbalance. It's like driving with your foot jammed on the accelerator all the time. Sooner or later, something's going to break. Yet, accepting this mind-body unity would require a huge shift in how we practice medicine. Doctors would have to stop seeing a patient as just a collection of organs and lab results, and start seeing a whole human being where mind and body are inseparable. It would mean longer consultations, more listening to life stories, and less blind reliance on tests. And let's be honest, that doesn't fit well in our current healthcare model that values speed, productivity, and standard protocols. It's much easier to order a blood test than to ask a patient about their deepest fears or childhood coping mechanisms. For patients, confronting this truth can be just as painful. It means recognizing that the way you have lived and handled stress may have contributed to your illness. This is not about blaming the victim. It's about taking responsibility for how chronic self-neglect and emotional suppression can impact your health. It's tough to admit that you spent years betraying yourself, ignoring your limits, smothering your feelings, perhaps to gain acceptance or love. It's easier to believe it's all in your genes or just bad luck than to face that realization. So, society keeps this topic in the dark. No one talks about it, and you continue to live the same pattern, thinking it's normal to always be exhausted, anxious, and drained. But deep down, your body knows it's not normal. And if you pay attention, the subtle signs are already there, telling you that something's wrong. The people-pleasing persona and chronic stress. You probably know someone like this, and maybe that someone is you. Always available, always ready to help, always smiling, even when inside you're crumbling. This is the person everyone describes as so good, so selfless, the rock of the family, the friend who's always there. But this same person is silently carrying a weight no one sees. According to Dr. Gabor Maté, this people-pleasing, never-say-no persona pays a direct toll on physical health over time. How does this pattern begin? Often in childhood. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where your own emotions were not a priority, where if you cried, you were being dramatic. If you complained, you were ungrateful. And if you got angry, you were scolded as being bad or disrespectful. Children in these situations quickly learn an unfortunate lesson. To be accepted and loved, they must be pleasant, low maintenance, and helpful. So they adapt. They shape their entire personality around this survival strategy. Please others, hide your pain, never cause problems. By adulthood, this becomes an automatic script. You say yes to every request, even when you're exhausted, because you don't want to disappoint anyone. You take on extra work duties that aren't yours because conflict or saying, "I can't," scares you. You tolerate disrespect or even abuse in relationships because you fear that setting boundaries will make people abandon you. Whenever something hurts you, you swallow it and pretend it doesn't bother you because causing a fuss feels wrong. Over time, you might not even realize you're negating yourself because you've confused being good with being invisible. Here's the cruel irony. From the outside, this self-sacrificing behavior looks like virtue. People praise you for being so generous, reliable, and kind. No one sees the invisible cost you're paying, and you yourself have become so identified with being the good person that the thought of changing feels impossible. After all, it's who you think you are. Altering this behavior means redefining your entire identity, which is terrifying. But if you don't change, your body will eventually change for you, in the harshest way possible. Why? Because the body doesn't understand the noble facade you're trying to keep up. Biologically, every time you stifle a legitimate emotion, your body registers a threat. A healthy anger response, for example, is a natural reaction to being threatened or violated. It sets boundaries and mobilizes you to protect yourself. But if you've been conditioned never to be angry, what happens to that energy? It doesn't just vanish, it turns inward and becomes toxic stress. The immune system, which normally defends against invaders and rogue cells, gets thrown off balance. Stress hormones like cortisol stay elevated far longer than they should. Inflammation smolders throughout the body. Over years, this chronic internal pressure wears down your organs and immune defenses, opening the door to chronic illnesses. Dr. Maté noticed that many lifelong people-pleasers and conflict avoiders eventually ended up with serious diagnoses, not due to random bad luck, but because living to please is biologically unsustainable. The body craves authenticity and congruence between what you feel and what you express. When you constantly say, "I'm fine," while you're not, when you stay silent to keep the peace externally, you create a war within yourself. And sooner or later, that war spills out onto the battlefield of your body in the form of disease. This isn't just anecdote or theory. Researchers have identified a specific personality profile, sometimes called type C personality, associated with a higher risk of serious illness. The cooperative, people-pleasing type who avoids conflict and suppresses negative emotions behind a polite facade. In one long-term study, people who habitually repressed their anger had cancer rates 40 times higher than those who expressed anger in healthy ways. Another study found men who didn't effectively show their emotions had lung cancer at 5 times the rate of those who did. Researchers have similarly noted that patients with autoimmune diseases, like rheumatoid arthritis, often exhibit traits like perfectionism, fear of anger, hyper-independence, and a crushing sense of responsibility to be strong and do everything themselves. Very much the never ask for help, never burden others mindset. Even in neurodegenerative illnesses, striking patterns emerge. An old joke among doctors treating ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, is that ALS patients are the nicest people, almost to a fault. They never complain, always accommodate. In fact, technicians at one clinic quip that when a patient is not extremely nice, they doubt it's ALS, and they're usually right. It's as if being nice at the expense of your own needs is a risk factor in itself. Ask yourself if any of these tendencies sound familiar. Difficulty saying no. You feel compelled to say yes and help others, even when you're exhausted. Conflict avoidance. You go to great lengths to keep the peace and avoid offending or upsetting anyone. Repressed anger. You never get angry, or if you do, you never show it outwardly. You might even pride yourself on this, not realizing it could be harming you. Excessive responsibility. You feel you have to be the strong one for everyone, handling things alone and never asking for help. Self-worth through approval. You put others' happiness before your own and conform to others' expectations, tying your self-esteem to being liked. If you see yourself in even a few of these, it means that to some extent you are internalizing stress and repressing emotions in your daily life. Rather than releasing stress through a healthy fight-or-flight response, you're bottling it up inside without even realizing it. You may look calm and easygoing on the surface, but beneath that, your stress response is constantly activated. This kind of internal, unacknowledged stress is like an invisible poison that you carry around, all the while telling yourself everything is okay. When the body shouts enough, the human body is remarkably patient. It will endure far more than it should. Late nights, poor diet, hectic days, and yes, years of swallowed conflicts and ignored needs. But that patience has limits. If your body realizes that you aren't going to change course, that you intend to continue burning the candle at both ends, ignoring its signals and suppressing your true feelings to maintain outward harmony, then eventually, it will put on the brakes for you. In other words, your body will say, enough, whether you like it or not. And when it does, it won't whisper, it will shout. This shout rarely comes out of the blue. It usually starts as a polite, subtle whisper, little symptoms that are easy to dismiss. Maybe you get tension headaches and tell yourself it's just too much screen time. You feel tightness in your chest and call it mild anxiety or caffeine jitters. Your neck and shoulders ache and you blame your pillow or your posture. In this phase, the body's warnings are ringing softly in the background, and you've probably learned to tune them out. After all, you've been conditioned to put yourself second. It's nothing, you say, just stress, so you carry on. But the body doesn't give up that easily. It speaks a little louder. Persistent digestive problems, frequent colds or infections, bouts of insomnia, new pains in the muscles or joints. You go to the doctor, run some tests. Often they come back normal. You breathe a sigh of relief that nothing's wrong on paper and use that as proof that you're fine. Meanwhile, your body is still trying to get your attention, and still you ignore the alarms. This is actually the most dangerous stage. The body is suffering, but the damage isn't obvious enough yet to force you to stop. It's like a smoke alarm with a dying battery, chirping in the background, easy to ignore until flames are devouring the kitchen. If you continue to tune out, the body goes into crisis mode. Serious diagnoses start appearing, conditions that cannot be ignored. Cancer, an autoimmune disease, a heart attack, a degenerative illness. As harsh as it sounds, Dr. Maté suggests that in many cases, illness becomes the only way for the body to slam on the brakes and halt a destructive life pattern. It's as if your body is saying, "Since you can't say no, I will say no for you." By falling gravely ill, you are forced to stop, forced to rest, forced to receive care instead of endlessly giving it. For some, this manifests as months of intense treatment that make it physically impossible to keep up your old obligations. For others, it's years of managing a chronic condition that demands you slow down. And for too many, it becomes a race against time, where life itself is in jeopardy. As disturbing as this is, on a biological level it makes sense. Repressed emotions do not just fade away. They are stored in the body, impacting critical systems. Chronic emotional stress has been shown to dysregulate the immune system, keeping it on high alert or confusing its signals. Stress hormones meant for short bursts of fight or flight flood the body 24/7, damaging tissues and organs. Over time, this state can lead the immune system to falter in its normal duties, like recognizing and destroying abnormal, potentially cancerous cells, or even to start attacking the body's own healthy cells, autoimmune disease. We often separate mind and body, but in reality there is no such separation. The systems that process our emotions are deeply interconnected with our nervous, hormonal, and immune systems. Your body hears everything your mind doesn't dare say out loud, and it responds accordingly. Perhaps you've heard stories of seemingly healthy, good people who never complained a day in their life, until suddenly a devastating diagnosis appeared. In hindsight, we realize the signs were there. The constant giving without receiving, the self-imposed pressure to be perfect, the grief or anger they never expressed. As Dr. Maté poignantly writes, many people with serious illness are woken up by their diagnosis. It is only when their body literally says, "No more," that they finally understand they need to put themselves first. The illness, as cruel as it is, can carry a stark message: change or die. It is the body's last-ditch effort to save you from your own unhealthy habits. Hidden versus visible stress, the real danger. When we talk about stress, most people picture the obvious sources of pressure: a hectic job, tight deadlines, rush hour traffic, bills piling up. It's true that kind of external stress can harm your health over time. But according to Gabor Maté, the most corrosive form of stress isn't the stress we feel. It's the stress we refuse to acknowledge feeling. In other words, the stress you hide, suppress, and swallow is the one that really wreaks havoc on your body. This is where the conversation gets uncomfortable. Many of us accept that a busy lifestyle or overwork can be harmful. That's easy to understand. Work too hard and you burn out. Sleep too little and you get sick. But it's much harder to admit that the real ticking time bomb might be emotional. That your inability to say no, your fear of speaking up, and your habit of bottling up feelings could actually be destroying your health. This idea forces us to confront habits and beliefs we've carried since childhood. It means realizing that every time you thought it's not worth arguing about and shoved down your anger, every time you held back tears to seem strong, every time you forced a smile and said, "I'm okay," when you weren't, you were accumulating an invisible toxin inside you. Dr. Maté observed something counterintuitive. People who express their emotions, even anger, in a healthy way, tend to be healthier than those who chronically repress them. That's because anger, despite its bad rap, is a natural biological response to threat. It's there to signal when something is not okay and to protect your boundaries. When you cut off this response completely, you're not achieving Zen-like calm. You're actually disabling your own defense system. It's important to clarify. Repressing emotions is not the same as genuine self-control. Self-control means you feel the anger or sadness, but consciously choose how to respond. Repression means you pretend you don't feel anything at all. You shove the emotion into a dark closet and lock the door. But that closet is within your body, and what's inside doesn't just disappear. It decays and leaks out in other ways. Psychologists note that people who internalize stress often become so accustomed to their own tension that they stop noticing it consciously. You might tell yourself you're not upset, but your body knows better, and it's reacting even if your mind refuses to. Over time, this creates a constant state of internal strain. Muscles remain tense, even when you think you're relaxed. Your heart rate stays a little higher, your blood pressure creeps up. Stress hormones circulate in excess, confusing your metabolism and immune responses. It's like running an engine without ever letting it cool down or get an oil change. Eventually, parts start to wear out or malfunction. And tragically, many people don't pay attention until a major breakdown, like a heart attack or autoimmune flare, forces them to. We often tell ourselves comforting lies to avoid facing this. Time heals everything, we say. But time does not heal wounds you refuse to even acknowledge. It often just buries them deeper, where they continue to fester. Everybody's stressed, we say. I'm no different. But not everybody swallows their stress the way a chronic people-pleaser does. The crucial difference is whether stress is processed and released, or pent up and denied. The stress you express, by talking, by crying, by constructively venting frustration, that stress is metabolized. The stress you suppress just accumulates. And when the internal pressure becomes too high to contain, it will erupt as illness, not because your body betrayed you, but because it was trying desperately to get your attention. The silver lining here is that if unfelt emotions can make us sick, then bringing our truth to the surface can be healing. The body's stress response is dynamic. It can calm down when we start living more authentically. But breaking out of a long-held repression pattern requires courage and a real shift in perspective. Breaking the cycle. Learning to say yes to yourself. How do you break this cycle, especially when it's all you've ever known? It's not as simple as doing a breathing exercise or booking a spa day, though those can help in the short term. It's deeper. It's about rewriting the way you relate to the world, and most importantly, to yourself. This process begins with a seemingly simple concept that can feel revolutionary if you've spent your life putting yourself last. Recognizing that your needs and feelings are just as legitimate as anyone else's. For people trapped in the people-pleasing, self-suppressing pattern, the thought of saying no feels almost unthinkable. Not because they don't know the word, but because deep down, there's an almost childlike terror of rejection. Consciously or not, you learned long ago that being accepted meant being useful, agreeable, even invisible. That lesson became tattooed on your identity. So the moment you consider pushing back, refusing a request, expressing a contrary opinion, asserting a boundary, a voice inside screams, "Careful, they won't love you anymore." Breaking away from this programming means facing that old fear head-on. The possibility that someone might be displeased, disappointed, or even walk away when you start honoring yourself. That prospect is scary. That's why, even when you know your current path is harming you, it can feel easier to stay in the familiar pattern. Changing it means stepping into the unknown of self-assertion. The first step is understanding that taking care of yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. You cannot keep pouring from an empty cup. Eventually, nothing is left to give. Healthy boundaries don't alienate the people who truly matter. They only repel those who are taking advantage of your lack of boundaries. As you start to say no where you need to, you might experience guilt or discomfort. That's normal. You've been taught to feel guilty for prioritizing yourself. But as one cancer patient insightfully told Dr. Maté, after learning to set boundaries, "If I feel guilty, wonderful. It means I must have done something right. I must have done something for me for a change." In other words, feeling a little guilt or discomfort is actually a sign that you're breaking old habits and healing. This change is not just psychological. It has very real physical ramifications. When you allow yourself to acknowledge and express your true emotions, you are effectively telling your body, "It's okay. We're safe now. We don't have to be in fight or flight all the time." Your physiology can finally shift out of constant alarm mode. Stress hormone levels can rebalance. Chronic inflammation can begin to decrease, and your immune system can return to proper functioning. It's akin to opening windows in a stuffy, sealed house. Suddenly, fresh air can circulate and clean out the stale pressure that's built up. Of course, transforming a lifelong pattern isn't an overnight miracle. Just as it took years to ingrain the habits that got you here, it will take time and practice to build new, healthier habits. Part of this process is relearning how to listen to your body. Instead of immediately dismissing or powering through your symptoms, start treating them as messages. That bone-deep fatigue that's been nagging you isn't laziness. It's your body pleading for rest. That tightness in your chest or lump in your throat isn't weakness. It's a signal of anxiety or unspoken sadness that needs compassion. That tear that wells up in your eye which you blink away, that's the truth trying to surface. Each of these signals is an opportunity to change course before a full-blown illness forces you to. Be prepared. Breaking the cycle will be a continuous, not a one-time effort. You might set a boundary today and then cave in tomorrow. That's okay. Progress is rarely linear. The key difference is that now you know the cost of betraying yourself. Every time you catch yourself falling back into saying yes out of fear or guilt, you'll remember that doing so isn't harmless. It chips away at your well-being. Over time, this awareness itself becomes a powerful motivation. Saying no when you need to, speaking up when you're hurt, resting when you're exhausted. These stop feeling like selfish acts and start feeling like what they truly are: acts of radical self-care and preservation. Listen to your body before it has to scream. Your body doesn't lie. It never has. From the first subtle signs, that strange fatigue, those unexplained aches, the anxiety flaring up, it has been trying to get your attention. We humans have a dangerous talent for ignoring the obvious, especially when facing it means changing habits or confronting uncomfortable truths. But if we ignore our body's whispers for too long, eventually it will lose patience. And when the body decides to raise its voice, it can upend your whole life. Remember, your body's overriding goal is to keep you alive. It couldn't care less about your packed schedule, or your fear of disappointing others, or the expectations you think you have to live up to. When push comes to shove, the body will do what it must to protect you, even if that means forcing you to stop in your tracks. As Dr. Gabor Maté has starkly noted, illness is often the final signal the body uses when all earlier signals have failed to make you change course. In his words, disease can be seen not as the dreaded enemy, but as the body's desperate attempt to save you from yourself. It's a messenger that arrives when the message can no longer be ignored. The tragedy is that by the time the message is loud and clear, by the time you can't ignore it, it often comes with a diagnosis that may be irreversible or life-altering. So, we face a crucial choice. You can choose to dismiss all this as an exaggeration, to say, "I'm just stressed, but who isn't, and carry on as usual. You can tell yourself that everyone lives this way, and that your body's complaints are no big deal. Or you can pause and acknowledge that feeling deep down, the one that's been nagging you in the quiet moments, telling you that something isn't right. The feeling that you're teetering on the edge, that you're pushing past your limits, that you're pretending to be fine when you're not. If you recognize that feeling, then now is the time to decide. Will you listen to your body's warnings while you still have the chance to course correct? Or will you wait until it has to scream so loudly that you have no choice but to listen, when it might be too late to undo the damage? No one else can make that decision for you. Not your doctor, not your family, not this article or any video. The power and responsibility lies with you. One thing is certain. Every time you honor your true feelings, every time you set a healthy boundary, every no that protects you from harm, those are not just emotional victories. They are direct investments in your physical health. Conversely, every time you silence yourself to keep the peace or overextend yourself to please others, it's a withdrawal from your body's reserves. Over a lifetime, those withdrawals add up. The good news is that the body also responds when you start living in alignment with who you really are. It feels when you begin to treat yourself with the same care and respect you've always given to others. In that alignment, there is strength, healing, and new possibility. It's never too late to rewrite your story in this regard. As long as you're alive and breathing, your body is ready to support a new way of being. So, take a moment and reflect. Has your body been trying to tell you something? What was a time it gave you a warning sign that you ignored? Or maybe a time you finally listened? Consider this your invitation to start listening now, before the stakes get any higher. Your body has been speaking to you all along. It's up to you to hear it, honor it, and heed its message while you still can. If this resonated with you, consider subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into the mind-body connection and healing. Your support helps spread awareness and could be the first step for someone else to start listening to their own body.